Welcome back to another episode of Psychocinematic. Today we are covering A24's Beau Is Afraid, which is by far the weirdest movie I've ever seen, written and directed by Ari Aster, and as always, spoilers ahead. So if you watch this movie, you know that it is basically a 3-hour fever dream, and I'm going to do my best to explain it based on my interpretation. I'm not saying I'm right, and I'm not saying you're wrong if you didn't believe this. I'm sure that I'll miss things, and then other things I simply just don't understand the significance of. So here we go. My theory is that everything that Beau does, all the way up until he's getting that phone call about his mom dying, and then he gets into the bathtub, that's all real. Beau looks up to the ceiling, sees the same man that was crying for his help in the streets, probably just Beau's inner voice. This guy's not actually there. The brown recluse on his face is not actually there. By the way, Beau is the recluse in the apartment, and you can tell the man's about to give up. He's struggling to hang in there, which is Beau about to kill himself. He's about to drown himself in the tub. And so the man falls from the ceiling and then lands on Beau, and they have that scuffle where they keep rolling around in the bathtub. And I think that's really just him convulsing because he's drowning himself and he's struggling to stay under, struggling to live, but he's trying to kill himself. If you remember, he dies at the very end of this movie in a very similar way. He's in a bathtub shape, a boat, that ends up flipping over and trapping him underwater, and he is stuck under there and therefore drowns. There's constant drowning imagery, whether it's water overflowing from a bathtub, water in general, the dude who drowned in the pool on the cruise ship. It's everywhere. So I believe some scientists have speculated that when you have a near-death experience or when you're dying, like you have a DMT chemical release in your brain, so it gives you like this psychedelic experience. And I'm imagining that this is what is happening in Beau's brain. Everything that happens after he drowns himself in the bathtub is probably happening actually while he's drowning. He's having all these crazy flashes of his internal battle between the guilt that he feels for having wanted his mom to die, like he was talking about with the therapist. He said he didn't, but then the therapist is like, oh no, you can tell me. And honestly, the therapist could have just been his guilty conscience. All the therapist writes down is guilty. And he's been battling with this codependence with his mom. It seems like his mom is paying his bills and has basically created every fear that he has, starting with him not being able to have sex because if he ejaculates, he's going to die. So the rest of this film feels like his psychedelic journey to get some sort of closure. So fast forward to when Grace and Roger, the people that hit him with the car, take him in. Grace left the note for him, stop incriminating yourself, under his drink. And what I feel like that was is, I mean, he was incriminating himself by talking to the therapist in the end when his mom turns out to be alive and they have like everything recorded and it's all being played back. This could also play on stop incriminating yourself, stop. You're not actually the bad guy here. You have been manipulated by your mom to feel this way. And now the TV security camera scene when he sees that he's being recorded and he can rewind and then, oh my God, all of a sudden you can fast forward, which that is a really cool idea, by the way. But the reason he can fast forward and see everything that's going to happen is because it's all in his head. He's having this out-of-body experience of sorts. A real quick side note, this has nothing to do with my theory. When they're having that paint drinking scene with the blue and the pink paint, and Grace comes in to check on her daughter, I wrote down that this is basically what I imagine a Trix yogurt commercial would look like in a Black Mirror episode. Absolutely terrifying. When Beau escapes Grace's place, he runs into that pregnant woman in the forest and instantly gravitates towards her. This confirms the fear that his mom had, where if he met another girl, could impregnate another girl, that he would instantly have a person who's now more important than his mom, whether that is his girlfriend, wife, child, and he ends up giving her the gift that he was apparently going to give to his dead mom at the funeral, the little figurine statue thing that he was holding. Now with the play, it felt like it was kind of just giving us a little more context on his life, but I don't know if he's the dad or if he's one of the children, because if he's the dad, you know, like they said, he hadn't had sex yet. But then if he's one of the children, later when they get to the funeral, it says that he is the last remaining son. So I don't know if there was 3 kids or if it's just 2 kids, him and the one that's in the attic, or if it's just him and the one in the attic doesn't even exist. I definitely could have done without the cock and balls monster. That made me feel like I was watching the most recent Jackass movie. I think it was Jackass Forever, when they fight a giant cock and balls monster and it ejaculates all over them. I was like, gosh, dang it. Like, you know, this movie was teetering for me. And then that happen? I'm like, come on. And so the cock and balls monster, his mom says, that's your dad. And, he never met his dad. So really to him, all his dad was cock and balls. That this idea, this, again, like a hereditary thing, it's being passed down generation to generation of your balls are a curse to you. You cannot ejaculate without dying, having a heart murmur. When he has sex with Elaine, it seems like there are two parts of his brain that are warring. One part saying, you would have been fine if you just would have had sex. And then the other part saying, no, someone would have died and you're better off dying a virgin. And then Beau takes the boat into the tunnel where he is being put on trial for everything that has gone on in his life and with his mom. And his mom's got this great attorney, this big boisterous voice that, really takes over. And he's got this quiet attorney on the other side who gets murdered. He's just constantly being bulldozed by his mom, and the guilt that she makes him feel and the codependence of basically not being able to get on with life without her leads him to commit suicide. So that's my theory. I would love to hear yours down in the comments. And also, here's the joke moral of the story that I came up with. From now on, mommy issues are way worse than daddy issues until proven otherwise. And finally, for my review, I'm going to give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. I didn't hate this movie, but I also didn't really enjoy watching it. I don't think I'll ever watch it again, and I don't think that it needed to be 3 hours. It had several moments where there was just a ton of tension, and I was in it. And then there were long stretches of times where there was just a really deep lull that I knew would get a payoff later down the road because, after all, this is Ari Aster, and I know his brain just thinks differently and he's going to give you that good payoff in the end. However, I personally like Hereditary and Midsommar much more. I love symbolism and deeper meanings in a movie, but this type of movie feels like it's too one-sided where it all just feels like a dream or a vision, which to me feels like it lowers the stakes and I'm left asking myself, what was the point if it's all just a dream or a vision? Basically, the most I can tolerate with that kind of style of filmmaking is the movie The Night House or a movie like Black Bear, both of which I've covered here on this podcast if you want to check those out. And that's all I have for you guys today on Beau Is Afraid. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. If you did, leave me a thumbs up. And then again, comment your theory down below. I would love to read them. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.